our final performer, do we need a minute to, okay, keep going. Our final performer, or writer tonight, I don't know, performer, that's, final reader tonight is Roger Breisch, who has lived an eclectic life. He holds an MS in mathematics from NIU and an MS in management from the Sloan School at MIT. His career includes teaching high school mathematics, managing an international chemical business, operating a management consulting company, and most recently running the Batavia Chamber of Commerce for 10 years. He chaired the Batavia 4th of July fireworks for 17 years, works with teens in an anti-alcohol, anti-drug program, and has spent more than 25 hours answering calls on the suicide hotline. Today, Roger loves challenging audiences to see how their thinking keeps them from finding true happiness and success. He and Judy, his wife of 33 years, have 2 grown children and live in Batavia, Illinois. Find a treasury of Roger's essays and columns at rebreisch.com. That's rebreisch.com. And don't miss the video of his recent TEDx talk, which was a profound experience for all. Tonight, Roger reads 2 of his essays, Eroding the Riverbanks of Life and Never Far from Tears.
Multimedia. So one just small correction, it's 2,500 hours on the suicide hotline, 25 hours. It's okay, it's all right, it's okay. You know, I say I don't write fiction, but then I listen to my biography and I say, you know, maybe I do write fiction pretty well. So this first piece is called Eroding the Riverbanks of Life. The flow of a river is constrained by its banks. Over time, however, rushing water erodes the banks and redirects the course of the river. Riverbanks are necessary to give form, and yet the river retains the power to alter its future. If you would be willing to play along here, what appears to be a game just might prompt some surprising questions about the riverbanks that constrain our own lives. So I have there's 3 points here, 1, 2, and 3, and a 4th point. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to follow 2 rules to pick future points. The 2 rules are pick one of these numbers at random, and then from where you're at, move halfway there. So we start here, and suppose I pick 1 to begin with, so I move halfway to 1. And then maybe I pick 2, so I move halfway to 2. And I pick 2 again, so I move halfway to 2. Pick 3, I move halfway to 3. Pretty simple, right? 2 rules. Pick a number at random, move halfway there. If you do that 100 times, you end up with something that looks fairly chaotic and random. Not surprising. But if you do that 30,000 times, and I won't wait, it's called Sierpinski's triangle. You will always get that, and it doesn't matter where you start. You will always get Sierpinski's triangle if you do this, follow 2 rules. I find this both stunning and terrifying. I'm stunned that 2 such simple rules that appear at first blush to yield chaos, countenance order and beauty over time. Order out of chaos. That's stunning. Rules as simple as green means proceed and red means stop gives order and meaning to millions of vehicles. Do unto others is a simple rule that often gives order and meaning to our own lives. But there are ways in which this terrifies me as well, because as long as you may remain allegiant to these 2 rules, future dots are determined and our path is immutable. We'll remain trapped in that pattern forever. So I wonder how I might remain trapped by the rules in my life, even those so very subtle they remain imperceptible. Might there be a way in which my future is constrained, rigid, and immutable as well? I hated to write in high school and remained for many years certain of my inability to assemble meaningful words on paper. Others, I'm a loner, I'm artistically destitute, I'm not a good listener, I don't like to read. Those defined much of my life. While I've not overcome the feelings about lacking artistic ability, I have set many of the others aside. I leave you with one final exercise. Allow yourself a few minutes to reflect on the rules in your life. No doubt there are many that provide you with order and meaning, but if you're honest and look deeply enough, you just may uncover a few that keep you trapped in work, in relationships, and communities, or images of self that limit your freedom and constrain your future. It just might be time to jettison them, erode the riverbanks of your life, and allow stunning new patterns to emerge. Multimedia is over. Sorry. So the second piece I wrote following the TEDx talk that I gave at IIT last April, and it's called Never Far from Tears. I've spoken before larger audiences, but this was to be my first TEDx talk. Giving such a talk is a huge honor, but at some point you realize your remarks will remain forever on the internet. It matters not whether you deliver them with eloquence or stumble meaninglessly for 18 minutes. The thought of reliving a poor performance for the rest of one's life can add a certain amount of terror to the moment. As I drafted, edited, and practiced my remarks, I discovered the more I spoke from my heart, the stronger the reaction to my message. When I edged towards a logical, rational narration, audiences responded with polite applause and kind comments. But when I spoke from my heart with words tinged by emotion, those to whom I spoke reacted with rapt attention and walked away with deeper understanding. John Keats once said that the heart is the only organ strong enough to educate the mind. A number of years ago, when improvisational pianist Michael Jones reminded me of Keats' wisdom, he added, "When we're thinking from our hearts, we are never far from tears." The journey I traversed before my walk onto that stage is worth a moment so I can honor the person who gave me permission to think from my heart in that moment, to navigate the territory between logic and emotion with deep authenticity in that very public, frightening place. The 14 presenters rehearsed the day before TEDx IIT. After my rehearsal, Bob Royblatt, the stage manager and advisor, pulled me aside and admitted that my remarks touched him. Bob's a professional speaker and actor. His command of the stage is inspiring. So his generous comments helped build my confidence and allay the terror. However, as the conference began the following day, my trepidation grew. Since many of the talks preceding mine had a decidedly technical bent, I feared the audience would be uninterested in my message. My remarks were written to educate their mind by touching on their hearts. At the first break, I told Bob I was losing my nerve when I expressed my fear that the audience was in a state of mind rather than a state of heart. He told me, "What you have to say is more important than all of that technical stuff." It was kind and generous, but not nearly as powerful as the words he imparted the moment before I walked on that stage. Literally, as I was about to walk, he grabbed my arm, he looked me in the eye, and he said, "You go out there and you make me cry." From the first moments on that stage, as I mentioned my work on the suicide hotline, I wrestled with tears. I wondered if I touched on my emotions too early, but as I walked off the stage, Bob reassured me once again. Did you see the audience's reaction? You grabbed their attention from those early moments and never let go. I frequently find myself betwixt and between logical thought and deep emotion, caught somewhere in the fissure between my cerebral cortex and my heart. We live in an era that would have us believe the logical and rational are the singular keys to success. We practically abhor emotion. When they arrive, unbidden, we're encouraged not to feel. One young man I spoke with last year was suffering from a number of reversals in his life. He was struggling mightily and told me tearfully how frightened he was of his future. When I asked if he could gain support and comfort from his father and his older brother, he said, "You don't understand. In my family, a man who admits to weakness or struggle is just ridiculed." The word courage and the word heart both derive from the Latin word cor. It takes courage to allow the heart to educate the mind. Perhaps someday we will collectively become more comfortable thinking from our hearts and honor those who are never far from tears. If I could, last year I did the same thing. I spoke right after. Last weekend was a snowball weekend with 130 teens. It is always 3 days of deep emotion. It is emotionally and physically draining, but it is also extremely life-affirming. So just a week ago today, as we neared the end of the event, I found myself talking to a young African-American teen. And I took the opportunity to say, "So what might you have learned about yourself in the last couple of days?" And he looked at me and he said, "I learned that I cry very easily." And I said to him, I hope you will honor that. I hope you will live into that, because this world needs men who will model that behavior. I said, after all of my years at Snowball, if there's something that the teens appreciate, respect, or perhaps even love about me, it is my willing to be vulnerable, authentic, in public, and often in tears. I looked at that young man, I pointed at his heart, and I said, "Your tears just might be your greatest gift." In that moment, his eyes welled up. He grabbed me in a bear hug, and for 3 or 4 minutes, he embraced me and cried uncontrollably. It's a moment that I still don't completely understand, but a huge blessing in my life, that an aging, elderly white man can be in the embrace of a young black man and have that moment together. Brene Brown, if you know her, the social scientist and author, brilliant woman, said recently in a talk I heard her give, she said, "We think that we are intellectual beings who occasionally have an emotional experience, and in fact the opposite is true. We are emotional beings that occasionally have an intellectual experience." And I believe it's not until all of us come to that deep understanding and live that into the world, it is only then that we'll even be able to begin to heal the incredible pain and suffering that we see every day in every part of the world. With that, I thank you. Any questions? No, thank you.
You nervous? No way.
No.
No. Any questions for Roger? Frank, talk to us.
What makes you cry?
What makes me cry? It's hard to predict. But I know when that young black man grabbed me and started to cry uncontrollably, I did as well. So many times the stories that the teens have at Operation Snowball. On the suicide hotline just a couple of weeks ago, talking to a young man, a senior in high school, who had dug himself into a really deep hole and had clawed his way out. I was so touched by this young man, and I don't usually say this, but after 45 minutes into the conversation, I said, I don't typically say this, but I really love you, young man. I love who you are and who you're becoming. And he began to cry. And I said, "Are you okay?" He said, "It's not tears of sadness." He said, "It's just the first time anyone has ever told me that." And I started to cry.
Anybody else? Dory?
What is Operation Snowball?
Operation Snowball, thank you. It's a teen program. It's for high school students. It's a leadership program, but we really focus on living healthy lives. It's anti-drug, anti-alcohol, and it encompasses, our chapter encompasses the entire Fox Valley, all the schools in the Fox Valley, and any teen, any high school student is certainly welcome to join us. And we do 2 weekends a year. We have meetings every Thursday night, so teens can continue to meet with other teens who want to stay healthy. We have 2 weekends a year, one in March and one in November. And then you have to understand, the moment you start to talk to teens about drugs and alcohol, then you're immediately into, dysfunctional families and divorce and death of loved ones, and all of this stuff comes rushing at us for 2 or 3 days, and it's emotionally draining, but very life affirming.
Anybody else? Russ?
Why do you have a picture of Robin Williams?
Oh.
Sorry.
I think he's referring to this.
Well, I mean, I use this often because so much of my life is talking about suicide, and this one really sort of, everybody says, I don't understand. But to bring it back to what I said about the messages that we have about ourselves, is one story that I tell. I remember many, many years ago, and I read a wonderful article that said, Robin Williams didn't die by suicide. He died by depression. Suicide was just, the end of that. But I remember reading an interview with Robin Williams many, many years ago when his star was just beginning to shine. And he said, "I truly believe that one day someone will tap me on the shoulder and say, 'Guess what, Robin, we figured you're not funny.'" And I think that there was a piece of him who, that was, one of the rules in his life that perhaps kept him stuck for many, many years, is that, I really don't think I'm funny.
Hard to believe. Anybody else?
Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.